My name is Mike Nelson, and I am with Nginx. And this gentleman is the master of Netscaler. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's me. Nothing else. Henrik Johansson, also with Nginx. I'm not sure if my mics are working, but I got a voice otherwise.
Is it actually on?
I don't know. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netscaler, not mics.
Is it on now? Can you hear it?
Well, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me, the audio guy who left the room? Anyway. So Henrik Johansson with Nginx as well, working with Mike. And we're going to talk a little bit about Netscaler monitoring. Basically monitoring and reporting. What can you use in Netscaler? What can you use with Netscaler? What data can you get? As Mike started talking in the beginning, we want to do this kind of interactive, so a lot of discussion. If you have any questions, ideas, whatever, just bring them up, and we'll shove a mic up your face.
or talk really loud. That's
Exactly.
all you got to do. So the way we want to run this is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ask a question for everybody, and this is just to get a baseline for what we're going to be talking about. But how many of you actually know what a Netscaler is? Good. That's a good starting point. Yeah, you're in the right session. How many of you actually use Netscalers? All right. How many actually use like the F5s or Barracuda, anything like that? You get, okay, F5s, Barracudas. Anything else? Coyote? Anybody use Coyote Point? Anybody use anything like that? What's that? NOBS? Yeah, anybody use software-based? I don't know.
Anybody be used F5?
Yeah, we see.
Yeah, the door is there, so it's...
Yeah. Come on now.
Oh, no.
Kemp.
No, we don't have
Kemp
A10.
Yeah, I didn't know. I mean, there's probably, it depends, okay? And the reason for that is because you have to look at the feature set, too, of what you're getting. Are you just getting a load balancer, or are you getting 20 other things that go along with it, right? F5, big IP, application controller, you name it, under the sun. Same thing with Netscaler. Depending on what you license, you get a list this long of different things. Whereas when you go to a Kemp device, that's pretty much a load balancer, and that's it. Okay? Well, you can add a couple more things, but it's nowhere near what you can add to these. So what we want to do is find out what you guys are using. If you have any questions while we go along the way, just let us know. All right, and we'd be more than happy to try and answer them if we can.
So the things we're going to cover today, like I said, a couple of quick questions. We're going to throw out a couple of questions during the presentation as well. Different scenarios, what to use when, which is basically a little bit what we cover now. What you can do in the box with the Netscaler without using any third-party tools. What you can do outside the box, how you connect it to your existing monitoring solution, how you connect it to alerting or whatever it is that you want to use it for, trending analysis. A couple of examples. We have a couple of demos, and we're going to throw in demos a little bit now and then, so it's as much hands-on as possible, basically.
Yeah, a lot of the sessions that we do, we get a lot, we get the feedback, and maybe it's just me, but a lot of the sessions where if you put in there that there'll be demos in the session, they expect like the whole 75 minutes to be demo. And you get a bad rating back. But
yeah.
Oh yeah, see. But yeah, we are going to have a lot of demo. We have live VPXs up here, ready to rock and roll, along with some other stuff. So we're going to show you live stuff. The other thing I have to mention before Henrik gets going here is he's playing with his new toy. Just so you know. So if he has a leap motion that's controlling.
So if I'm waving, I'm not waving at you.
Yeah. Yeah. So if it gets screwed up, it's his fault. So what we're really here to ask is, find out who, what, how, where, when, and why. Now, there are different types of scenarios that you can do to, why you would ask these things. Now, obviously, this slide was not supposed to end up this way, but it did. But what I wanted to point out here, does this have a pointer on it?
Yeah.
Where?
Big
Right there? Oh. Okay, so you can't see a lot of this, but up here, what's one reason why Okay, if you have something happening on your network, you would want to know how any of those answers to those questions. Okay, anonymous. All right, you're getting hacked. You're going to want to know how that person is hacking you, right? You're going to want to know when they started. You want to know who it is. Okay, then you start talking about, you can't see this, and this really sucks because this slide didn't work out. But you can't see this, but underneath there was an old, it's not Citrix. I don't know if you remember from BriForum like 5 years ago. They gave out those posters, and the guy's got a big black eye, you know, and it says, it's not Citrix. You want to tell your users, you know, they're coming back and saying, everything's really slow. You know, we can't log in. It takes forever to create a printer, you know, all this other crap. These are the things that we're going to show you. You can identify, you know, what is causing that problem. Same thing with PCI compliance. Anybody know that the Netscaler comes with a built-in PCI compliance report? You can turn that report over, and the government will accept it. Your PCI compliance vendor will accept it.
I was going to say, since no one raised their hand, how many actually have used the PCI compliance report in the Netscaler?
Cool.
If you're in like banking or finance or anything that deals with credit card information, anything that deals with payment information, you are required to do this. So it's not optional, it is mandatory.
Well, you're required to do it, but it depends on how you deliver it, because I've been with auditors that just want you to tell them, hey, it's compliant. Okay, you're done. You can't see the image behind here, but if you can see, it's actually what it is it's an error that's being called. Okay, so it's giving you a 500 error, a 404 error, or something like that, and you want to find out why that error is being generated. All right, the Netscaler can tell you that. There's another one down here. There's SSL errors. You get an error code SSL error handshake failure alert. People will say, why isn't the certificate working for my website? Why are we having such a problem with our customers being able to, you know, authenticate or to give their payment information, or, you know, God forbid, give their payment information to you, but anything else, you know, why isn't SSL working? Over here you have the common one. Whoops. Over here you have more of a common one. You know, an administrator does a ping and sends it out to google.com, and it comes back, and all of a sudden it's like, you know, 500 milliseconds, 900 milliseconds, 1200 milliseconds, you know, request timed out, request timed out. One good place to check is if you have a Netscaler in your perimeter, is look at the Netscaler. Netscaler can tell you some information. It may not give you the answer, but it might give you some hints.
So a follow-up question on that. How many people in here actually use the Netscalers as their monitoring solution for backend services? So I would say, why not? The Netscaler is actually one of the most awesome monitoring tools you actually have, because first of all, it's going to alert the users instantly because the user can't access the services, but it's also going to monitor the service and make sure that even if users don't notice it because you're load balancing everything, so you have 2 nodes up or you have 32 or whatever it is, it's still going to alert the backend system that, okay, I see that we only have 50% or 30% or 75% availability on this server, and send a note to the administrator about it. The Netscaler will know instantly because it's the one that you set up the monitor to, with probably the lowest interval of monitoring times as well. Your monitoring system will probably just poll it every 30 seconds, every minute, 10 minutes, whatever it is. The Netscaler will most likely poll it every 5 seconds, every 3 seconds, whatever it is, to make sure it's up.
Exactly.
Why not?
And that's one of the things you have to think about. One of the questions I should have asked is how many people that are using Netscalers are actually using it just for load balancing? Okay? How many people are actually using other features like cache redirection or responder or SSL offload? Okay? Anybody using app firewall? Wow, nobody?
It is really good. If you didn't know, it is really good.
Okay. What other features are people using that we haven't talked about? Well, okay, I apologize. Yeah, Access Gateway. That was kind of a given, but I'm sorry. Access Gateway. Anything else? Anybody using any other features of the? Okay. Well, yeah. Oh, yeah. Rewrite. Yep. Very good. That gives us a good baseline, so we know what we're talking about here.
And that actually also is, since you are using it for your desktop delivery, you are monitoring, for example, STA service, you are monitoring your host, whatever it is, and desktop setup, whatever it is, web interface, everything. Just add an alert. So what's that? Should be, yeah. Everyone should be doing it. You're checking your certificates. You're making sure that your certificates are valid. You have built-in monitors to make sure that if they are starting to expire, you send a note on it. Your AD, you're monitoring your Active Directory servers. You know that they are up and running.
Let me ask this question. For those of you who are using Netscaler for a specific service, so maybe you have a web app on the back end, or you're load balancing, proxy servers, or you're load balancing ADFS, or you're doing something on the inside, right? The inside network you're using Netscalers for. How many of you have actually just used it for everything to feed out your parameter? Nobody? So any traffic that comes into your network has to exit out the Netscaler. Okay. All right. I have to ask why. You have this device that can do a million things, that can do it at 200,000 transactions per millisecond. Why not? But
yeah. So a really important question there. The thing is, Netscaler does not replace a firewall.
No, it's not meant to.
It's not a firewall. It's an ADC. It's an application delivery controller. It's not a firewall. A lot of times people sell that as saying that now you got Netscalers, now you can throw away your firewalls. They do not replace the firewalls. They do replace a lot of the firewall's features in some of the cases, but it's not an automatic one-to-one relation, so you can just throw it out. Right. It is a router.
It is a router.
I mean, it is a router, but it's also a traffic controller. You can get the traffic in, you can divert it and send it wherever you want. If you want to add a couple of extra security layers that you won't be able to do on your firewalls, you can do that. If you want to provide extra redundancy and extra reliability for your services, you can do that. So you got all the capacity for it. It's basically like buying a Ferrari and driving it like
a Pinto.
Yeah, a Pinto. And they use that as pure, and they use the F5s usually just pure load balancing, no real monitoring, they just use it for load balancing.
But I have to ask the question then why? Because you're paying for both.
Because I'm talking to the wrong team.
Yeah.
I'm talking to the Citrix guys. I'm not talking to the network team.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not a Netscaler, a total Netscaler fanboy. I mean, F5, I worked with F5 for years, and I like F5. They had some really good stuff. Their big IP when it came out was phenomenal, But it's just a matter of changing the way that you design your networks and changing the way their traffic flow comes in and out of your networks. Yeah.
Our network team.
That's been the case historically, but when network guys see the Netscaler, they love it.
Yeah.
Oh, they freak out. I've had network guys say, "Are you kidding? It doesn't have Cisco's name on it? Forget it, man. It's not sitting on our perimeter."
As our network team said, is that it's a black hole on how to troubleshoot an issue
So
from end to end.
a good thing there, I mean, not to boast vendors, but I mean, we're talking about a Citrix product. Citrix is coming out, so if you are a Cisco shop, they are coming out with a lot of training material, how to traverse from, for example, Cisco and Cisco ACE methodology to Netscaler. So if you have Cisco people, there is training material online, there is conversion tools, there is information on it. You will probably get help if you have a big case or whatever. You're going to help a Cisco shop to implement Netscaler. And I mean, it's not that you're trying to kick out a Cisco deal, it's that you're adding to the value. You will probably get a lot of help from them as well. So the Cisco people will get the help they need. So you had a question back there as well, two of them actually. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Common scenario. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Let me ask you this: is that on your network, do you have a VPN concentrator? There's no reason to have a Netscaler can do VPN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
yeah, and the access gateway boxes, the dedicated access gateway boxes didn't help it either. I mean, it basically got a really bad reputation.
The CAG.
So it it was like the red hell seeing the front in the server room. So no, yeah, exactly.
Everybody ever try and troubleshoot the CAG in here? Anybody work
God.
on that? Didn't that suck? Oh. Ugh. Okay. So yeah, we hit that slide. He's doing his leap thing now. He's trying to get that thing. Go ahead.
I realized standing out here and waving my arms wasn't a good idea because I jumped 10 slides. So a couple of different scenarios that we talked about, what we can use it for. I mean, like I said, we actually do have a couple of slides. We have the core logging, we have external logging, we have built-in troubleshooters, dashboards, command center, Netscaler Insight Center, like I said, Edge side, rest in peace.
Edge site for Netscalers going away. Bye-bye. So just
Did anyone actually ever
implement it.
try
Nobody
and
actually
use
puts
it?
Edge site for Netscaler in? Good.
Edge side for Netscaler is not Edge side though, just so everyone knows. It's two completely different code bases. So, SNMP. So, looking a little bit about the different features, we can actually jump ahead one. If you look at what you can get out of it by just using the box, like what do we actually have here? I mean, it is like quite a capable logging mechanism and reporting. I would say that most of the log systems are for troubleshooting and for performance monitoring, and if you have a performance issue, but that falls under troubleshooting. These are not the fancy reports that you send to the customer or to the boss or whoever it is. These are the ones that you use for troubleshooting. If anyone worked with the Linux system, the message is basically you get all the information during the boot time. So you get like if there is any hardware issues, if you can't mount the hard drives, if you have a hard drive failure, corrupts file system, or whatever it is, you get that information there basically. NS call messages is performance issue. It's performance data. It's historical data. It saves as much data as can. You can set up retention on it and change that if you want to. But it's all the performance metrics that passes through the box every 7 seconds. So it saves it every 7 seconds to a flat file on the system. And you can use different tools to extract that data. If you have, for example, service that's running slow, or you think that you have too many connections to a service, what it can handle, you can use these logs to extract that information. We're going to show some examples later on as well. Excuse me. We have a couple of other logs that you're probably not going to hit too often. That has to do with authentication, with NTLM. We have different performance metrics.
Yeah, and a lot of that is specialized when you're actually trying to troubleshoot a specific issue. One thing to remember is that the core of this thing is a Linux box, right? The core of a F5 is TMOS, which is Linux. But it's a hardened Linux, and it's not one you can just install off the shelf. But Linux logs everything, and it logs everything to a file. That's how the Linux operating system works. So it does generate a lot of log data. Now you can control that, and we're going to show you how to do that. The other things that you can use is things called visualizers, which are really cool. We're going to show you that. You can actually visualize the traffic path in App Firewall. The dashboards, there are dashboards that you can create. You know how your executives and your executive type people love these pretty graphs and pictures and charts and stuff like that. That's what dashboards are for. And also for operations personnel to take a one snapshot glance at what's going on. Then you got the built-in syslog GUI, which is basic, but it does allow you to view the syslog. And then we have reporting, which is hugely, I have much improved, but it really is hugely improved from even the version 9 up to the version 10. It was one of the sticking points that we had was this reporting was really crappy early on, and they really improved it. Some of the hints that we have is, and I use it all the time, I'm a command line guy. I don't like GUIs that much. So I use a lot of command line, and anybody uses command line in Linux, tail-f is your friend. If you want to see real-time log entries, tail-f will sit there and show you things as they come in. So when you get into the shell of the Netscaler, you can use that on any log file, and you can see the actual data being generated as it's being generated. So, yeah.
I use AAA debug a lot for LDAP.
Yeah.
What are some other ones that you guys would use?
Go ahead.
I would say if you're troubleshooting authentication issues, AAAD is the one that you look at. I can show you an example. debug is everything that has to do with authentication, even if you're just doing changes on the Netscaler, will be logged there.
Right.
If you set up, for example, Access Gateway to log on and send the authentication information to the backend, this is the log file that you look at. Every time you have an issue,
Yep.
you're going to find it there. And most cases, it's going to say that could not or didn't find the user, for example, in the Active Directory, and you say, why? Because it is there. And it's probably because you set up the base URL wrong, or you're not looking at the right OU. You have an OU that for some reason is locked, so for example, for read. So the account you set up to do the LDAP queries doesn't have access to looking at OU. So the debug will not tell you that you don't have access to the OU, but it will say that I can't find the user. Meaning if it says that you can't find the user, connection to the Active Directory is working, but something with your account and the Active Directory doesn't match. So just use that account, do an LDAP query or whatever you use, and see if you actually get the result you're expecting.
One of the things to remember too is that besides load balancing, before load balancing came along and they put the Access Gateway into there, Access Gateway was like the only reason people bought Netscaler. And you know, load balancing now is kind of taken over, and all the other features.
Unless you're a web shop or
right,
Amazon
exactly.
or
Exactly. So troubleshooting authentication was huge. I mean, they came out with a whole Citrix support troubleshooting paper on how to look at that log and how to troubleshoot authentication issues into the Netscaler.
And there's a couple of, like NSCon message, there's a lot of articles out there. Most of them deal with the same kind of information. NSCon messages looks, if you're not used to text-based administration, like if you're not a PowerShell person or not a Telnet SSH, whatever it is, it's going to look scary, but it will give you a lot of good information. I'm going to show a couple of demos later on as well with what kind of information, but anytime you troubleshoot like policies, anytime you troubleshoot performance, NSCon messages will show you.
Yeah, one thing, a key on that is that you want to look at that tech note because it tells you what the fields are inside of all those log files. It'll tell you what all those headers mean because some of them are abbreviated and things like that. So that tech note will help you, that 117392.
Should we jump on or do a demo?
Yep, you can go ahead and jump on a demo. Or are you going to go to the next one?
We can do this and then do a demo.
He's running the show. Boy.
So how do we get the data out of the box? The built-in data, the core data, and the core logging. Well, you have the GUI and you have the command line. Those are basically the two options you have. The GUI has a lot of different tools that uses the different command lines to get information. It uses NSCon messages, it uses the stat commands to get live data and everything. There is, for example, one of the articles we list here. A side note is that we haven't tried it on the 10 version. It's an old article, but it's, for example, getting the performance data out of the Netscaler and directly into Excel. So there is a separate tool that you actually have to run on the Netscaler box, and you have to download it and add it to the box. Like I said, I haven't run it on the 10 version, so I can't say if it's actually working, but another example, like I said, the NSCon message, which is NSCon message, you can do, for example, check the new NS logs is basically anything that has to do with the events and whatever is happening in the Netscaler. You can, for example, check all the console events that has been pushed to the physical console, because you're most likely not going to have a screen connected to the Netscalers, but you still, because it's still OS in the bottom, that's going to push some kind of messages there. So if you have a corrupt disk or whatever it is, it's going to be there. Hint, know your case, is that NSCon message is whoever built that tool did the really smart thing of saying that a capital K means that I want to read. A small case K means that I want to write. So if you send a small case K, it means that I want to override whatever is in there. So there are some security measurements in the later versions of Netscaler, but it's still like, make sure that you use the right K unless you want to override everything.
I wouldn't call it smart because I would have made the K something else. For right,
exactly.
like W, duh. Oh, yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to show you some example of what kind of data you get out of this. You also had the stat commands?
Yep, the stats command. This is something that is really pretty much, if you're looking at the dashboards, okay, that or a snapshot in the reports, this is giving you the same type of information, but it's giving you it from the command line. So what it'll do is it'll give you a quick stats, say the protocol TCP. It'll give you all the stats on a specific protocol and what's happening with that protocol. You know, stat the Netscaler, that stat NS, that'll give you all the brief information overview summary of the Netscaler status of its CPU, disk, everything, stat NS, okay? These are just commands that you can get from the GUI. These are the stat commands are the ones that are used under the sheets, if you will, at the command line. You can also do reports. The reporting, like I said, has gotten much better. We're going to show you a couple of those. The built-in, the canned reports, they've added to them, and you can do custom reports, and they can come out really pretty now. They used to be, you know, look really bad, but you can export them now, and you know, they make good reading material for your boss.
And like we said, the dashboards are a good way to get instant access to whatever is happening in the box, like how many connections do you have. If you're troubleshooting something, for example, and you want to make sure that the users actually are hitting the box, dashboards, really easy way to just go in and see per vServer or per server, per IP, whatever it is, how many connections you have at the moment. If you know that the backend server is getting overloaded, you can go in and see that, okay, I actually have 300K connections trying to hit this web server, and it can only take 4 users. So, I mean,
one also is bandwidth. It also gives you a nice little graph on bandwidth, which a lot of people will look at and say, how come I've only got, you know, 20 connections coming in, and they say it's slow as hell. And you'll look at the bandwidth gauge, and it'll be down to like, you know, 2. So you're like, something's wrong here. I don't have my pipe. Something's wrong with my pipe. So.
And you can also go in and see, for example, what backend services are getting the most traffic, what of my public websites are getting. So let's say you have a public website, people are starting wondering like, are we under attack, whatever it is, you can go in and make sure that, oh, you actually see that you have 10 times as many connection attempts. So. And
just a good example of that is working with someone who put up like 10 websites behind a Netscaler. They were a retail business, and they wanted to know, you know, periodically how their websites were being utilized. Obviously, you can use like Google Analytics and, you know, whatever else, web trends or whatever they call it, I don't know. But you can use those. But one of the key things was that we were able to pull out on demand that, you know, 2 of the websites that they spent an enormous amount of money on, e-commerce sites, for 6 months had no visitors, had no traffic, no transactions. And they thought they were making money off of these things, and, you know, they found out that, you know, we can tell them right off the bat, these sites aren't doing anything.
Just going to do a couple of easy demos.
This is a Netscaler VPX, by the way. Everybody familiar with the VPX, virtual versus physical MPX, and then also the SDX, which is now the multi-tenant big daddy that people like Steve can afford? Okay.
So a good hint here as well is, if you ever, how many people get really annoyed that they're getting logged out of the GUI constantly on the Netscaler? Yeah, just open a dashboard in the back end on another tab, because it's never going to time out if you do that. So it's really high security. What happens is that since you keep pushing data, whatever timeout session you set during the logon is going to be overridden by the dashboard. So. So, good thing to know. Looking a little bit on the kind of information you get out of the box, like we said, you have, just a quick question, how many here prefers using the GUI over the CLI?
You GUI folks? It's okay to admit it.
Yeah,
I
no,
understand.
so the
It's
thing
all right.
with, yes or no, I mean,
It's all right.
Citrix has put a lot of effort into making the GUI and the CLI to be equivalent. So whatever you can do in the CLI, you can actually do in the GUI as well.
Which isn't true for a lot of devices.
Yeah. So they've actually put a
Nobody
lot
else.
of effort into it. They're still not to the point where they, like for example, Microsoft do with the PowerShell stuff, that you run something in the GUI, you can actually extract the PowerShell command on it. But you can actually do that if you just monitor the console, because everything is being pushed to the NSCon logs. So if you have that, if you want to know how to do something, do the change and then monitor and see what comes out on the console. And it also, yeah. I mean, it's a flat config file, so
Yeah.
except some stuff.
Yeah, just my personal opinion is I was raised on command line, right? But my personal opinion is that if you want information that is closer to real time, use CLI. Because the GUI has to update, okay? When you're in a dashboard, that needle has to update the image to go from here to here, all right? If you're actually doing a stat command on your bandwidth, you're actually seeing it real time.
So we're going to show some more tools later on as well, like for example the tracing tools. Not everyone probably know, but you can get access to any log file through the GUI as well. There are built-in consoles for it. You have, for example, view events, you have log file duration. So if I go in and view events, it shows the NS log. But I can also browse to any other log file I want to. And I can simply run the command, and I get all the information pushed to the console right here in the GUI. And I can go in and take a look at whatever it is I want to see. So, I mean, I'm not sure how much shows.
Yep.
We'll see. You can also go in and take a look at, for example, all the different, like for example, memory utilization, whatever it is you want to find out. So anything is there. You also have, for example, this is a Linux box, so you have, for example, top, which is a good way to show whatever CPU is running high. So if the core is about to crash for you, you can actually go in and see how much system resources it's using, or if it actually has crashed. The Netscaler has basically two ways of crashing. One is a core will crash, which will show you some sort of error, and the other one is that the entire box will crash. Usually when a core crashes, it's going to fail over to the other one, and then simply restart the core in the background and that process. So it's not going to restart the whole box just because one of the processes fails. It's just going to do that process and then be on.
You got to remember, this is a Linux OS, so it's just going to fail a core. It's not going to fail the whole box. One thing I did want to mention is that when we talked to the guys who actually developed this thing, I always ask the question. People look at it and they say, how come they never made it so it's nice and pretty, like, you know, on an F5 it exports to a PDF when you want to look at that log, or it exports to a, you know, opens up Notepad or whatever. They wanted to keep it basic, right? And I think that's, you know, it's okay. But you can always export any file directly from the GUI. So you just do a save as to text file and it saves it as text, just like a Cisco device.
One of the good, this is not a log, this is a real-time tool, so it's going to be instant. So let's say you want to see how many people are connected to a server or a service, or how many people in general use it. The viewing the TCP connections is still the best way to show who is connected where. Just so you know, this is any connection that is active. So if you connect to a server that you don't have stateful on, it's going to be gone as soon as you are done with that transaction. So anything that is idle, anything that is connected will show up, but not the other stuff. So you might have to do refresh a lot of times. As you can see, I mean, this is a lab environment, so it doesn't show too much. But you will see, for example, also a good improvement on the 10 and 10.1, that you're going to see that, okay, this is a monitor, this is a RPC server, whatever it is. You can also go in and, for example, show the client-server mapping. So now I can see that on the client side, this is the external connection, and it's connected to this backend server. And also get a little bit of historical data.
Yeah, if you go up a little bit, one of the key things to remember, to look at here, is if you're trying to find out who, it's going to give you the source IP. Hopefully that source IP is going to be a public IP. It's probably an added, so you're not going to get much out of it, but you know, you get all that information right in that screen.
And just so you know, this uses the exact same policy as the rest of the Netscaler uses. So whatever whatever information you're trying to get out, like if you want to check for a certain subnet, if you want to check for a certain IP, whatever it could be, you can use this so you don't drown the data. If you have a web shop that has 300,000 connections per second, you probably don't want to do show all because that's going to kill your Java. Break it down, actually what you're looking for. For example, if you want to see what vServer is hitting, what IP it's hitting on the back end, whatever it could be, make sure you do that. Same thing when you do an NS trace. Setting up trace everything is going to fill your logs.
Bad idea.
I've done where you basically get about 100 to 300 megabit of trace logs per second, which is kind of awful when you're trying to open that file in Wireshark, especially if you need to capture like 15 minutes or whatever it is, or 30 minutes, it gets ugly. So make sure to break it down to whatever information you actually need. So looking at the different login and auditing, let's start with the internal stuff.
Yep, go right to the system.
We have, the Netscaler saves the files in NSLog format and in syslog format. There is actually, they are not the same thing. Syslog is an open format standard, so it's a fixed standard. NSLog is Netscaler's own system, so if you're going to use NSLog, make sure that the system you want to send that data to actually knows how to interpret NSLogs. But that's the thing with Netscaler, is that every data you can store on the Netscaler and you can send it out. So if I go into the global change setting for auditing, I can set it up so...
Yeah, you got to close your windows.
Close that. I can set it up so it's going to send to the local system and to the external system. Don't go into the global system and change so it only sends to the remote system. You want the data on the Netscaler as well. It might seem really smart because we have a central login system, we send everything there, yeah. But if you're going to go in and troubleshoot something, you're probably not going to go to the central login system first to go and dig through a ton of syslog files that is mixed together with every other file you have. Start easy, start on the Netscaler, then you move on to the central system. But if you have a security breach, then you definitely want an external logging system as well, because whatever is on the Netscaler could be compromised. It's the same as any kind of system. If you have a security breach, the local log files are usually worthless.
One of the common things that I find when trying to troubleshoot a Netscaler is, and especially with logging, is that people don't turn on the right kind of logging. So one thing you want to remember in here is that you want to actually enable the logging. When you actually set this up, none of these are enabled. They're actually all unchecked. Okay, because it generates, as Henrik said, it generates a lot of data. But when you're actually going in to troubleshoot something, you want to make sure that you check what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do TCP, ACLs, any kind of user configurable log message, like you have a service that sends a specific message to the syslog, you can craft your own syslog message. You want to check that, or app flow, if you're going to be logging app flow. But you got to remember to turn these on because they're not on by default. The other thing is to make sure that you don't set debug if it's not necessary, because debug will give you data like you wouldn't believe. So you want to be careful when you go into here. One of the things that Henrik did was he configured the auditing properties, but he's doing it on a global basis. Okay, so that covers anything that's being done under auditing. This isn't on an individual basis. This is on a global. All right, you can set auditing, different levels of auditing on a local basis also, and he can show you that.
Like I said, set up dedicated login for whatever it is you want to get out of it. If you go back and look at some of the console messages, like I said, Good example on the event console.
You can't read that.
Oh,
He's got like gray on black or something.
yeah. Sorry, 2 seconds, I'll just change the color here. There we go.
Default foreground. Or no.
There we go.
Cursor. Hey, whoa.
I like that. I'm a gray on black person, so. So this will show you the different messages and the different events being said. So for example, I can see here that one of my web servers went down a bit earlier. I got a failure there. This is just examples, and yeah, that's leap motion. That thinks I'm clapping my hands. You can also see, for example, that I did a save config. I did a complete save config, so it actually finished. Why this is important? Kind of is, because if you have a centralized login system, you also need to know who does what. So if someone goes in and changes something and saves it, you definitely want to know that in the auditing system, because if you get audited and you don't know who did what, yeah, guess you're going to fail.
Let me ask a question. How many people in here actually go this deep and have looked at logs like this in order to troubleshoot? How many are actually even interested in doing it? They just like have the network guys handle this and I don't want to deal with this. Gotcha. No, it's understandable.
So to show you an example of where you probably want to go in here and do this, I think I have it in my history, so I don't have to write it again. Which probably would have gone faster. So we had a couple of people that use content switching and things like that. Anytime you use any type of policy, and you're wondering why aren't the user going to the correct site? Like, is the policy actually happening? You go into the GUI, you click refresh, then you go into the stat and look, okay, it's this number, and you do the change, and you go back, you click refresh, because like you said, it's static, it's not going to dynamically update the information unless you do a refresh all the time. So instead of that, what if I simply type,
Another good example of that is anybody does cookie injection. You know, you can do that on a Netscaler if anybody does that. That's another good one. Trying to figure out where if that cookie is being set or not.
and
Yeah.
oops, there we go. And suddenly I saw that. Now this was just a compression policy, but when I hit that web page, I suddenly saw that the compression policy took in effect. So if I'd had a content switch server there, and I wonder which server is actually hitting, because I'm splitting the content, so I have, for example, all the graphics going to one side and all the CSS files going to another side, then I can actually see how many times they are hitting, and then you know that if you do a simple refresh and you see everything going to the same server, your policy is probably not correctly written, which is kind of usually the case when people write really complex policies that you have to try and error a bit. So that command will save you a lot and save a lot of time, because you don't have to go into the GUI and do the refresh cycle all the time. Let's see, what else do we have? We can also, for example, see, let's make sure that we want to check performance metrics. We can use NSCon messages to make sure that, or check how many connections did you have against a certain backend server or whatever it is. You want to check how much bandwidth you're using. And again, you can use NSCon messages to get up all the information you want. So you can see that, for example, on the service that pointed on port 80 on this IP address had this amount of hits per second, that amount of traffic going through it, and this is saved every 7 seconds, and you can set the interval to say that I want to check the statistics between these 2 hours or this 5 minutes, whatever it is, as long as it's in the same log file. You can also go in and see how much time span is saved in a certain log file. Was there anything you want to show? You also see the CPU information and stuff like that, so.
Yeah. We can go back to the slides. Anybody have anything they want to see from the command line? As a demo? Anybody have anything? No? Okay. We're here for you. Yeah, you want to see it, we'll show it.
So that's basically the, I'm checking here just to make sure. We have a couple of more demos later on that. If we go forward to looking at logging outside the box, we talked about all the internal logs, and not all of them, but there's a ton of them. We also have the external logging, and it's quite a lot of them, to be honest. First of all, we got to make sure that what protocol are we going to use, what technology. One example, SNMP. SNMP, I would say, is to monitor the hardware. You want to check if the hardware is running. If you get a disk error, or if you get overheated CPU, which, to be frankly, not happening too often. But that's basically what you use SNMP for. You can do that in a variety of ways as well.
Yeah, one of the things that I know is that they actually take the MIB from the Netscaler, and there's a couple of SaaS providers out there. I don't know if everybody's familiar with one called Logic Monitor. Logic Monitor will actually take the MIB and they'll compile it for you into their interface, and they actually will monitor and alert on up and down VIPs, up and down virtual servers, and things like that off of the SNMP MIB, which is available as a direct download from the Netscaler. So if you use a third party like that, I think there's another one called Loggly, and I'm not sure if Loggly doesn't compile a MIB for you, but I know Logic Monitor does.
Yeah. So for Splunk, for example, then we actually have that in the lab as well, so if you can show that as well. Splunk can basically capture any kind of data that you have. Send it out. I mean, we have the Splunk people out here as well that if you want to talk to them. Jason and Brandon are really awesome guys, so whatever info you want, they're going to show you. Splunk is awesome for example, syslog, AppFlow, which is NetFlow. We're going to mention that a bit as well here. For all those kind of needs, yeah, definitely use Splunk. Splunk has an app, or whatever they call it, for Netscaler.
Splunk for Netscaler.
Yeah, Splunk for Netscaler, which is a downloadable free app that you can use. And otherwise, I mean, the data that is being sent is syslog. So it's not complex. What you need to think about, however, is, we had this discussion actually during lunch, is the same thing as any monitoring tool or any logging tool that you set up. Don't set it up and send everything there, because you're going to drown in data. Set it up, it's the same as if you set up, for example, a SCOM environment and you hit enable all logging. How many people have set up a SCOM environment and looked at all the logging they get from it? Oh, no one. It's a fun surprise. You get a lot of stuff. And it's the same here. If you set up syslog to capture everything, you're going to drown. I mean, a good example is this lab box. It's just my personal lab box. It's no one else there. Not using it too heavy. And in a couple of hours, I had like 45,000 syslog events. So if you set up in a full production box, you're going to get a lot of information.
One of the features of the Netscaler is also something called NSLog. NSLog will actually take is a NS, they call it the NS, or there's a client that has to be run on a Windows box, and it'll actually pull the logs from the Netscaler and put it into a centralized repository inside of this NSLog on the server. I personally don't know a lot of people that use that, because they usually use something that does more than just NSLog, and that's all this thing does.
One thing you also need to think about on SNMP is that Netscaler does support SNMP v3, which is definitely something you want to look into, because SNMP 3 is encrypted and it's also used authentication. SNMP v2 is completely unencrypted, not hard. You can easily hack it if you set up, which a lot of people do. They set it up and say that I'm going to use public and private because it's preset. Or even if they don't do that, well, it's a server. Let's use server as my basically password. And then they set up so you can do everything on it. So I just use server, and then I push my commands to the system that is using the SNMP, and I get access. So SNMP v3, if you can, it's fully supported on the Netscaler box. So It's a bit more complex setting up, but it's worth it. No.
No.
That's a completely separate thing that you have to set up a script for, or use a really cool thing that's called Command Center.
Right.
Before that, we also have weblogging, which is kind of the same thing as NSLog. Weblogging is a separate tool that you install on a web server that pulls the data from the Netscaler, so it's not going to be sent automatically. You set up the collection interval and you basically configure collection servers on a Windows box. The thing that weblogging does is that it merges the web files, so you can say that anything that hits the HTTP log files, anything that hits this virtual server or whatever it could be, anything that hits this URL is going to be merged into one log file. The reason why you might need that is that you probably have a web service that has 10, even 2 web services on the back end, and if you send those logs that are on the web server, they're all going to show that Netscaler is the one that is browsing on your web pages. So your statistics will be shot. And the timing will be wrong because you have 2 different files. Most of the tools today that you use for analytics can handle this. So you can use Xforwarder to send the client's real IP as a cookie. But if you don't want to do that, you can use Weblog, and it's going to do that for you. It's going to merge everything really neatly, and you can choose if you want that as an Apache log or if you want it as an IS log, which is, well, IS or Open Standard. So weblogging is actually really good. If you're running a web shop, you should definitely look into it. Anyone who's not running a web shop, forget it. And we also have AppFlow, which is, like I said here, decoder ring optional. AppFlow is simply Netscaler's implementation, or not Netscaler, so it's an implementation of NetFlow that was created by Cisco. So it's simply NetFlow. Anyone that can handle NetFlow can handle AppFlow, basically. If you have Splunk, the 2 biggest tools on it, Splunk and SolarWinds, I would say.
Yeah, the next slide will actually show you a couple of them, but yeah.
Command Center?
Command Center, we actually have that running. We'll show you a little bit of that. But Command Center was actually brought out 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And Command Center is actually a separate installation and creates a database on the back end and takes all the data from multiple Netscalers, complete farms, if you will, remote Netscalers. It'll actually take anything that, generates SNMP, if you like. It can do Zen servers, it can do Zen app, it can do, Windows boxes, it can do pretty much anything. But its main focus was for Netscaler to consolidate. If you have load balanced Netscalers, some have some internal, some have on the perimeter. You consolidate all that information into one console, a single pane of glass, if you will. Not really a single pane of glass, but that was the goal. But it allows for centralized alerting from all of those Netscalers and all of those other devices. It's pretty much a monitoring tool all in one that you can get for free.
Exactly, I was just going to say, if you bought Netscaler, you do get Command Center as well. It's also available as a virtual appliance if you don't want to run it on a Windows box. Good to know, though, it still doesn't support Windows 2012. It still doesn't support SQL 2012. So if you have those, you're shot, and it doesn't work. Simple as that. You can use MySQL in the background, Postgres, whatever you want. But yeah, it's a dedicated appliance if you want to. Command Center also handles WAN-scaler. It also handles Send server. So it can collect logs. And the thing with Command Center is that you can also configure. So you can set up pre-configured tasks. So if you have a lot of Netscalers and you set up new ones, you can use that to configure the Netscaler. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. One of the key things that you asked before that a Command Center is really great at is automatic download of config files and the automatic backup of the config files on multiple Netscalers. So you can have that as a timed task. It goes out and grabs the config, stores it, creates a whole history of all the configs, basically an audit log, if you will.
And you can also use it to take backup of, for example, certificates and things like that, and also
certificate
deploy.
backup.
Yeah, and also deploy certificates. So if you have a lot of them and you set up a new server, it's easier to use Command Center. And like I said, it's free. It also has alerting capabilities. So if you have, which falls back on the discussion we have in the very beginning, where I said that use it to monitor whatever you want, and then send it to, for example, Command Center, and you can get email alerting. Netscaler does not have email alerting. It doesn't have alerting capabilities. It has logging capabilities, but Command Center has alerting. So shoot everything over there, set up a simple filter to say that if this syslog comes in, send me an email, or do whatever. Use that to connect to a text message system.
A common one that is used is the expiration of certificates, because a lot of people don't remember that their certificates are going to expire or when they expire. So it has a built-in trap that'll actually look at the certificates and look for it for 30, 60, 90 days out, and will email you and say this cert's going to expire.
Actually, it came out quite recently. The 5.1 came out not too long ago. Yeah, no, 5.1. Yeah, 5.1 came out not too long ago. It's last year sometime. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
No, it's a lot of change. Another tool that recently came out, it's been out for a while, which is also a lot of the confusion, is Insight Manager. That was, or HDX Monitor, Insight Manager, Monitor.
Well, you can't call it Insight Manager because that name's already.
No, exactly. So it's
yeah.
No, exactly. It's which is why I said disclaimer: product naming guarantee limited 24 hours, because it's changed names so much. No. This is the name of HDX Insight.
They changed the name again. They're going to change it again.
So Netscaler Insight Center. Netscaler Insight Center is their latest monitoring tool and performance metric tool that uses primarily app flow from the Netscaler to gather information on any kind of transaction that you have set up on the Netscaler that supports app flow, which means any TCP connection or whatever it is. The recent change, this has been out for quite some time, but it only did basically HTTP and TCP. That was only useful for HTTP mostly. What has happened now is that they incorporated HDX support, which means that the Netscaler Insight Center will take the HDX stream, break it down, decode it, decrypt it, send a subsystem, basically a substream, so it's going to duplicate the stream, dedupe it, and send it to a monitoring system. The original stream is going to be compressed and encoded again, and sent back to the user in the background. So everything is happening on the fly in the Insight Center box, or in the Netscaler. So it's just taking out the data from the HX protocol and collects latency. It collects everything that you can do with AppFlow, which is basically performance metrics.
End to end.
End to end. Yes.
You know,
well, yes and no. It's historical.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, are you familiar with EdgeSite for XenApp? How you can put an agent, an endpoint agent. This is going to be kind of the same thing, but you'll be able to do it from the Netscaler back to the user, where Command Center is actually just taking the data from the Netscaler and you know, putting that out there. It's not taking anything past the Netscaler or in front of the Netscaler.
So one good thing to know about this is, even though it's breaking up the protocols, it's non-intrusive, so it's not going to do anything on the traffic. The way EdgeSite worked when it was alive is that it tagged the traffic by using JavaScript and injected JavaScript real time on the pages, and then measured the same result when it came back. Netscaler Insight simply, it breaks down the protocol, analyzes, picks up the data that it wants, and compresses it and encrypts it again and sends it out. It is actually really cool. If you should look into it. It is actually an awesome tool. The information you get from it is really good. It's been available for Send server only, unfortunately. It's a really crappy made virtual appliance that has requirements that you have to have a certain amount of RAM, you have to have 120 gigabytes of hard drive connected to it because it can't do external storage. Hopefully that's going to change. So
it came out for ESX now, though.
It came out last week, I think it was, for ESX server as well. Hyper-V is on the map, so it's going to come out sometime.
And a word of caution, both Henrik and I have tried. Do not take the ESX version and try and convert the disk to Hyper-V. It won't work.
No.
So you can't, Hyper-V won't import the machine. So they've done some kind of trickery in there that you can't get it over to Hyper-V.
So it's still really good tool. Just going to do a quick demo here as well and show, because I also realized that I never show the reporting and dashboarding. So the dashboard, if you haven't seen it, this is what you get. It's real-time data that you can see, for example, uptime, CPU usage and everything. Simplified package and CPU monitors. You can also see the throughput in megabit per second, so do the conversion before you assume that, wow, we got 300 meg passing through the Netscalers. No, you don't.
Yeah.
Make the conversion before you say
And then
that.
on the upper right-hand side is actually a live look at the log. That's actually a live look at logging going on. So,
and you can set up cool graphics, whatever you want to show to whoever and send the report to. You can change whatever information you want here, heartbeats, SSL encryption, whatever it is. You get a lot of good information here. For example, AAA, how many failures do you have sent through the system? As I said as well, we can set up here. As I mentioned before that, you have the authentication system. Anytime I do something in the Netscaler, so if I'm in the configuration and do a refresh, it should, it doesn't do a real refresh.
there you go.
I can do a logout later on and show you. Any kind of information you do here will essentially show up there. Yeah, the big one is LDAP.
Yeah.
And if you don't have this today, LDAP works perfectly to set up as it's the same as a Cisco device or whatever it is. LDAP works perfectly to set it up as a local logon for the Netscaler system as well. So don't use NSRoot, don't set up local passwords, whatever. Have a backup password in case something craps out. Otherwise, use LDAP.
How many people are still using NSRoot? Come on, admit it.
And then send us the IP address of these. No, so you set up whatever LDAP group you want to give access to, and you get full LDAP integration with the local system as well. You can set it up for radios or whatever you want to use. So
we've got about 10 minutes left, so
yeah.
if you wanna.
So the dashboard, and you also have the reporting capabilities, and like I said, the reporting is historical. You see real-time information as well, but you use the reporting for historical data. So you can say that I want to show everything from the last year on these V servers, or every GET post I've had for the last month. I want to see the statistics on it. One really good thing you can see if you use, for example, multiplexing. You can see, for example, how many connections you actually save coming from hitting the Netscaler and going out on the back end. So if you want to sort of motivate why you bought the system, use these reports to show that you actually reduce the stress.
You mean justify why you bought the system.
Exactly. So just show the report how much data how much bandwidth you actually save on the back end.
One feature. Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that'd be a lot of data, yeah. One of the things too about Command Center is you can schedule reports out of Command Center and have them emailed to you and things like that. So
the best thing you should do there is compression and multiplexing. And like I said as well, you can also tie this to Splunk. And
this is not Splunk for Netscaler. This is just normal.
This is Syslog Splunk. So you get full information on everything here. You can say that I just want to show everything that has to do with app firewall. You click on it and it automatically tags all the traffic. You can say that I don't want to see app firewall. You just say ignore app firewall and you show everything else. Like Splunk is a really awesome tool for log monitoring.
Let's show that class. There we go.
Yeah, we also have a ton of other systems like Splunk. We have SolarWinds, Kiwi, really simple, really easy to use Syslog server. Comparing Splunk and Kiwi, I would probably say Splunk, but
yeah, there's from Plixer. A lot of these are AppFlow only. Like Plixer is AppFlow. That'll do anything that does NetFlow. Sawmill, I don't know if you're ever familiar with Sawmill. Sawmill will do 900 different kind of log formats. You can send any type of log to Sawmill, and it'll decipher it. The thing is freaking expensive, really expensive. Net manage engines and NetFlow, anything that's Nagios based that can do SNMP and can do NetFlow. There's a lot of hybrid, monitoring systems, open source monitoring systems, Xenos, a couple other ones, community-based versions that are based off of Nagios. Nagios is the core, and then they build on top of it.
One thing that is highlighted here that popped up recently in a new version is Hypothetical by Goliath. Yeah.
Goliath.
The new version gives you really, really cool information about the system.
It's awesome. I mean, if you get a chance to take a look at it, just to look at the website and look at the information you can get out of it, it's really cool. It gives you a lot of, and it's tuned specifically for Netscaler.
Also, one thing I want to mention is that we talked about earlier is if you're working with syslog, for example, SNMP, if you haven't seen it, there's a link called Downloads here, which will give you the information you want. For example, the SNMP, the MIB files and everything. It also has all the APIs, the Nitro API, which is actually really easy to write your own collection tools and your configuration tools.
Wow, look, a Netscaler gadget. Anybody use a Netscaler gadget?
The Netscaler gadget is actually a widget that you can install on Windows that gives you
sidebar.
Yeah, configuration information there. And everyone knows that if you set up a secure network, everything you want is like to put a gadget, a widget that uses like NSRoot or whatever authenticated password that sends directly from your client to the backend Netscaler system that you have all the security on. So it's best thing ever. You also have the SCOM management pack you can use to connect the data directly to System Center if you want that, and the Netscaler Gateway plugin for the version that you're actually running now. So you don't actually have to go out and download them. But so you have the download tab that contains the information you probably need for a lot of it. I think the last thing we're going to show was just an example on the log information you get out using, for example, app firewall. This also shows the built-in
visualizer.
The visualizers. So if we go in here and we want to check out the simple app firewall rule we set up, and this is also part of the new GUI where you get the Java that downloads the applet on the fly, goes really fast, not annoying at all.
He's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying attention.
So let's say you want to set up app firewall rule, you want to set up start URL is a good example. I can go in here and use the visualizer. This actually exists for most of the stat commands that you can do. You can also go through visualizers to see. So I can go in, I can go and click visualizers, and it's going to basically draw up the map of all the different sites that's being used on the Netscaler. And I can simply go in here and see that, okay, this is the rule that I want to use. So I can edit and deploy that rule instantly from the visualizer. You can also use this to see the physical layout of the Netscaler, so you can see your different NICs, what network you're connected to.
Especially if you have HA units. If you have HA units, it's really nice. Is this like an ooh-ah moment? No? Everybody, okay. This is really cool. I mean, this is much improved from the old version.
So it seems cheesy maybe, but it is actually useful. If you're setting up rules, you can actually use this to track down the pages you're actually using on the Netscaler. And if you want to set up app firewall on the NICs, it will show you. So if you have, for example, a misconfiguration, same thing on the load balancer. If you have 32 load balancers set up or load balancing backend services and you get inconsistency, you can actually go in here and see that, oh, one of these are actually falling outside of the scope. Then you can actually use the visualizer to go in and change that rule so it falls back into the load balancer rule.
I've also seen this used as not proof, but something to be able to show to network people to say where your traffic is actually going, you know, where they've actually seen, you know, because sometimes they have questions about, they don't know the Netscaler, they don't understand it, they don't want to, or they don't want to deal with it if they don't own it. you know, if you're in that type of situation. So you have to show them something.
This is also a good example, rushing through here. The built-in syslog viewer that you actually have with the Netscaler. This shows every log that, every syslog piece that you have on the Netscaler and all the command messages and audit messages. And you can go in and show for the different modules. So I can see, for example, AAA authentication. I can go in and see only the app firewall and see that, okay, we're getting a lot of not blocked here or a lot of block events. I can also, for example, ICA, I don't have any ICA configured on this one, but I can go in and see everything that is connected to those different protocols. This is really easy and fast way to troubleshoot. If you want to show everything, like just use the built-in tools to find the log information you want. You can filter out anything here.
Especially when you're dealing with virtual servers issues or access gateway issues. This is really a quick way to go in and take a look. We're out of time.
Yeah.
So
anything you want to ask in the last 30 seconds?
no. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Yeah. The PCI compliance report. You want to run that?
You can do that really.
Does anybody have any other questions while we run that?
Is everything on such a license server now, or still local?
Local.
Local.
Still local?
Yeah.
Still local. So the
I don't know if that's going to change.
I don't think so. It is a dedicated hardware that is supposed to run isolated.
Yeah.
So the reports now are on the system and reports, and you simply do a generate PCI report, and it shows instantly that I'm not compliant. Because, for example, I have access through Telnet, which means that I'm running like I said, it's an isolated environment, which means that I'm running an unencrypted protocol. So I'm not compliant for that reason. I have services with GUI access that not required SSL. I'm not compliant. So no, this is super easy to just do the extraction and then show on the web pages that you actually publish.
Yep.
And if I don't have app firewall enabled, it's going to be non-compliant as well, because you actually have to have an app firewall if you're running PCI DSL. So
I think we're done. Thank you very much.
Oh,
wait.
we have
Wait.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It has its use cases. If you have, for example, regulatory reasons or compliance reasons that you have to isolate and segment it. If you want to get a really easy demo, alpha, beta, or change environment that you can sort of have identical hardware on, it's a good way as well. Most cases, people get along with just MPX or VPX, to be honest.
Because the MPX has 8 interfaces on it, right? So you could have 8 different networks connected to that, and they don't cross. It's the same, unless you tell it for them to cross. But on a VPX, you're limited to, like, you know, if you have a VMware or you're hosting it on VMware or Hyper-V or something, you're limited to the virtual networks that you can plug into a VPX. But an MPX is physical. The same thing with an SDX. You know, you have all these ports that you can plug into, so you can have multiple networks, multiple environments, you know, which makes it easier for that type of scenario testing, multi-tenant, things like that. Yep. Thank you very much.
Thanks.